And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather video. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. We're going to blast through a whole bunch of stuff today, starting out with the 335 angstroms view of the local yellow dwarf, the Rosetta Stone of cosmology. And indeed, we could put up these videos every day as a cosmology segment, since the sun is the Rosetta Stone of cosmology. Anyway, there's 48 hours on the SDO in 335 angstroms. Let that play through a second time and step on the gas, as there's lots of stuff to do and not enough time, money, and energy to do it. Now, if you're wondering where the SDO is, that's where it's located. It goes from White Sands down toward the equator, off of the west coast of Santiago, Chile. Next, we're looking at a one-day view, the colorized magnetogram, to see some areas of magnetic activity and organization setting in the west, otherwise no sunspots. In fact, no sunspots, period. And we've got some more views for you. Here is the 193 angstroms, the one-day video of that. Pretty low levels of activity here, not even a lot of coronal holes to speak of. Here's the 94 angstroms, one of my personal favorites, not to be confused with the X-ray imagers, which perhaps we'll talk about at a later time. And we'll take a quick look at the fields here on HelioViewer to see not a lot of organization happening. Here's the fade to 304 angstroms. There's the latest. And we see a filament just erupting there around the north. Here's a HelioViewer movie in 304 angstroms. And you do get a view of some filamentary activity there in the ionized UV emission spectra of helium. And here's my personal favorite, the 171 angstroms. And we're coming at you today from the smash bunker, if you hear that rumbling sound. That's the classified technology of the smash bunker. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is still at 69, and if you want to read more about that, you can link to it at spaceweather.com. Just scroll down the left side here, and you will see the radio sun. If you click on explanation, you'll be sent to this Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology telling you about how it was discovered in 1947. Actually, it's not telling you about how it was discovered, but it was discovered in 1947 by Canadians, and about how it correlates to sunspot number and so on. There's a graph of the last 3 years plus. KP index, a measurement of global geomagnetism, is at 1. We don't see any solar flares or proton events striking. And here's the real-time solar wind. We've seen a ramp down in the solar wind velocity. Quite low levels there. A weak solar wind, 5.1 protons per cubic centimeter is the density, and 322 is the solar wind speed, so pretty weak, and the magnetosphere is following suit. Here's 4 hours of data on that, courtesy University of Michigan's geospace model. And there's a lot of data pulled together to get this model. We see much lower levels of electron flux, and don't be surprised to see this collapse more and more if we continue to see such a weak solar wind. Here are the ground geospace perturbations during this polar excursion. It's 4 hours of data, once again, University of Michigan geospace model. And bear with me, there's lots more stuff to cover. not a lot of ground magnetic perturbations seen today. Lots of power outages in Alabama, approaching 160,000, 65,000 in Florida, and 62,000 in Louisiana. California's got less than the last few days. Expect the power outages in these areas to increase, as there are places with 20 plus inches of rain forecasted at least. GOES magnetometer is showing us pretty weak readings and pretty small ranges here. Lower highs and higher lows. And we may be snapping across the current sheet polarity. Here is the visual top view ecliptic plane field plot of the potential field force lines, showing us that perhaps we are back in the North Pole current sheet. Looks like we're still in the South Pole current sheet, according to the last frame there. That data 1 hour and 22 minutes old. Here's a line of sight field plot showing you the B field in blue, and we do see a small perturbation in the B field here, making it more likely that we'll end up in the South Pole current sheet. You can see it being pulled down in this direction right at the end right there. And that is an indication we may snap into the North Pole current sheet. Here is the potential field force line chart diagram of the corona. And you can see those significant coronal hole potential field force lines in purple coming out of the North Pole. And today's Smash Lights is going to be highly truncated. We highly recommend that you look into different social media besides stuff like Facebook. If you want to see some alternative stuff, check out minds.com/smashomash. We're showing this before anybody else. The Washington condiments, because ketchup and mustard are not considered racist yet. Washington football team. Now, I've always hated the Redskins, ever since the Joe Theismann days. But I'm helping them rebrand, so cheers. Just fresh off the smAsho press. The Washington football team, now sponsored by Wiener Schnitzel, changing their name from the Washington football team to the Washington Condiments. We suggested the Washington bureaucrats, but that would, that would encourage them to lose every game and waste all of their money. Now, we do normally stream live to Twitch. Today, not. Twitch.tv/smashomash. If you're viewing on YouTube, please don't forget to press like and subscribe there. Press the notification bell. Check out our playlists, etc. We're also on BitChute, and we've got exclusive content there. bitchute.com/smashomash. More alt tech for you. Also, check out smashomash.org. It's got links to even more social media sites, as well as our affiliate links and our Teespring spots for our merch. Let's talk about COVID. It's very scary and very spooky. Are you scared? Are you spooked? Oh my God. I'm just going to leave you there, COVID. You're becoming pretty amicable lately. Federal court holds stay-at-home orders and mandatory business closures unconstitutional. Yes, and it's all because of counties in Pennsylvania. Indeed, indeed. Butler County versus Tom Wolf. And Tom Wolf has sought a stay of the ruling and vows to appeal it. So that's a benefit for all of mankind here, as mask and lockdown mandates are utterly senseless, especially for healthy people. And there remains just this side of zero evidence of asymptomatic transmission. People capable of transmitting COVID are typically not healthy, because if they're coughing and they've got the sniffles and they appear sick, they've got a much higher viral load to cough on you. But if they have no symptoms, they have a very small viral load. Let's talk about one of the benefits of Donald Trump. Yes, I know there's lots of people who are not fans of Donald Trump, but guess what? Congratulations on surviving a global pandemic so far. Let's talk about the 10th Amendment. The power is not delegated to the U.S. by the Constitution nor prohibited by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Which is why Trump has not tried to issue any national mandates for lockdowns or masks. He is aware of the concept of federalism. a limitation of the power of the centralized federal government, which should be the last resort in things such as lockdowns and mask mandates. In fact, they shouldn't even exist for healthy people because it's statistically and scientifically pointless and ineffective. Now, some people would have preferred national mask mandates and then later walked them back, stating that, oh, it's unconstitutional. Have you noticed some cronyism in places like big media? Do you think maybe that big tech, big media, governments and corporations are engaged in a massive scheme of
cronyism?
I certainly have. Why? Because I'm living in a plutocracy. What's a plutocracy? Well, go read about it on Merriam-Webster. Are you enjoying the
plutocracy?
It's got sprinkled into it a giant heaping helping of
corporatism.
How about corruption, covidiocy, and corporatism? Have you noticed every covidiot jumping up and down in the year 2020 and saying, "Hi, I'm a moron. Speaking of morons, here are two of them. Pennsylvania's finest covidiots, the top tier of covidiocy in Pennsylvania, Dr. Rachel Levine, and Pennsylvania's premier covidiot, Governor Tom Wolf. Back on April 25th at smAsho.com/forum, we reported the fact that they were caught in a lie because it was citing false COVID-19 figures. Yes, these corporatist plutocrats were lying to Pennsylvania about the numbers of deaths and cases and so on. Let's talk cosmology for a quick moment. NASA talked cosmology yesterday and didn't say anything relevant at all about solar cycle 25. They were even asked what makes sunspots dark, and guess what? They didn't give an adequate answer at all. In fact, they didn't answer the question, period.
What are sunspots and why are they dark?
What are sunspots and why are they dark? Guess what? They don't know. The reason is because you're looking at a very flat lattice, a vibrational lattice composed of condensed matter, which is emitting like a black body, and since it is so flat, the light that it emits is not visible when viewing it from a perpendicular angle, as you would here. That's why they're dark. Let's hear what NASA has to say.
That is a great question, and it depends what wavelength you look at them.
Oops. It depends what wavelength you look at them.
And I'm sure we've got some wonderful videos that we can show you, but if you look...
That's not an explanation of why sunspots are dark. The explanation of why sunspots are dark is because they're made of condensed matter. And so is the interior of the star, by the way, made of condensed matter. It explains practically all of cosmology. If you don't know about it, well, it's an awfully serious rabbit hole, and you should awfully seriously head down the rabbit hole of understanding the condensed matter, liquid metallic hydrogen theory of the sun. Liquid metallic hydrogen as a solar building block by Dr. Robitaille. If you haven't read it, look up The Sun on Trial, 40 Proofs, explaining the massive rabbit hole of condensed matter stars. What about condensed matter planets? Does condensed matter explain all of geomagnetic fields? Does it explain all of the solid body rotation in the cores of things like planets and stars? Indeed, it does. Let's talk about smashamash.com/forum once again. There is a cosmology forum in there, and in that cosmology forum is a topic on the most. Today's featured cosmologic object is Blazar 3C454.3, the most luminous object ever imaged. You can see right here how bright it got. There's how it was on December 2nd, 2009, and there's how it was on November 3rd, 2009. Quite a serious blazar gamma ray emission. If you want to read about it, head to smashamash.com/forum. Here's a zoom in on Sinbad. Check out those blue jets. I think that's some kind of an artifact. Keep in mind, a blazar is a galaxy with the poloidal field pointed right at you, which means there's basically a bridge of material coming directly toward you, the viewer, from that blazar. That's what makes them so bright, folks. It's all about perspective when it comes to cosmology. Speaking of perspective, people who donate to us have perspective in that they realize that YouTube tries to pay us absolutely nothing for the videos. We are on Subscribestar and on Patreon, which is the true source of funding for the content. Thanks to our patrons. Please consider becoming a Patreon. It's patreon.com/smashomash. You'll get updates before everybody else, as well as all sorts of graphics and other media. And look for, as the weather gets colder, that to increase, as well as our video production to increase. Thanks once again to our patrons. And won't you please consider funding the operation at patreon.com/smashomash, where we talk about smash lights and we talk about whatever we want. Because, well, we do have this thing called the First Amendment, after all. Let's get back to space data. The electron flux is actually cratered now, back down to very low levels. We don't see any sort of charging hazards for spacecraft. NOAA is forecasting a slight increase in the electron flux, as you can see there. And there's the 3-day chart. And we see a cratered electron flux. So expect GPS errors to be at a minimum here. And here's a visualization of the whole air column, which will give you ideas of where GPS errors will be occurring. They typically occur the most around the equator at noontime, if you were wondering. Here's just one slice of the atmosphere. This is just the ionosphere layer. And it's looking pretty normal here for the levels of solar activity and so on. Nothing out of the ordinary to be seen there. There's the data from 7:45 Universal Time. Here's where stuff is in the solar system as we approach another new moon, my favorite phase. There's where things will be in a week. I like to use in-the-sky for my star charts. Check it out. There's Betelgeuse. You know how to find Betelgeuse? All you do is you look for the 3 stars in a row for Orion's belt. You draw a perpendicular line from the middle one, and it goes right to Betelgeuse. The largest object, the largest single object visible to the naked eye alone, Betelgeuse. An interesting star which actually just did some stellar mass ejections. Next, looking at earthquakes to see no 6+ magnitudes in the past 24 hours. Let's scroll up the list. There's a deep quake in western South America. It's at 258 kilometers and a 4.7 magnitude. A bit of a lull in earthquake activity here, and one coming in while we did show prep. It's a 4.5 at 431 kilometers. And by the way, this is the deep quake capital of the world right there, folks. Fiji and Tonga. That region. Next, looking at volcanoes here on Volcano Discovery, and we see White Island back on the list. First, Abico, volcanic ash not identifiable. White Island has been venting gas, and the magma system appears to be open. So, will it erupt? Who knows? Leave us a comment if you've got a theory. Sangay, volcanic ash not identifiable either. Please don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unhealthful. Revenador exploding, flight level 150, 15,000 feet. Sabancaya also exploding, flight level 230, 23,000 feet. The weather.gov map is full of scary stuff for real. This is bad news if you are in a storm surge warning and told to evacuate. Please do, because you're something that can't be fixed if you get broken sufficiently. There's also tornado watches all around the Gulf Coast there. Keep in mind there's a bunch of heavy storms there, and the northwest corner of supercell in the northern hemisphere is the dangerous spot to be. Let's talk Sharticles. We got Sharticles here. And if you head to phys.org and click on Earth, you'll see a bunch of Sharticles. Arctic transitioning to a new climate state, something that's completely untrue, as we see record snow 3 years in a row in the northern hemisphere. Another Sharticle, dismay as huge chunk of Greenland's ice cap breaks off. Now the way calving events occur, folks, is because glaciers, they flow to the ocean. And if you provide record amounts of snow, they have record amounts of pressure on them, which pushes them, encouraging them to calve off into the ocean. This is why calving events happen. When glaciers recede, they recede up. They recede up from the ocean, up the glacier, up the glacier. That's a shrinking glacier. A growing glacier is a calving glacier. So here, once again, you are being straight up lied to regarding how things simply relate to each other. What a joke. I mean, if you provide record snow, you get record calving, because the glaciers, the ice shelf in between sea ice and the ice, the barrier between the sea ice and the ice shelf breaks down because the glacier is accelerated into the ocean by record amounts of snow. If you don't believe me, head to Global Cryosphere Watch and head to the snow tab, and you'll see, here's last year's. Notice how it's 2 standard deviations or more above normal. That's the 30-year average, folks. Are you still worried about the planet being so hot that it's cold? Because it doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. And there's a little bit of wisdom for you. Calving events are not an indication that a glacier is receding, but rather that it's probably growing, because glaciation is a result of snow, which is a negative feedback mechanism, which can make the entire planet go into an ice ball situation. The fear is a cold planet, not a warm one. 2 degrees warmer would cause mankind to cope and have lots more food. 2 degrees colder would kill at least 1 billion people. Probably many more. By the way, if you weren't aware, Antarctica formed about 34 million years ago when it was 3 degrees Celsius warmer than it is right now, just in case you're worried about Antarctica melting. Here is the water vapor map for Europe and Africa. Shout out to our viewers from there. Here's a water vapor map from the Far East and Oceania. Shout out to our viewers from there. Here is the Tropical Tidbits total precip forecast, and you can see probably more than 2 feet of rain forecasted there. So it's expected to head back out to sea by about 12 Universal Time on Friday. There's the read 'em and weep data. It's not looking good. Next, looking at pressure cells. We'll let this advance. I'm just going to move this to tomorrow. There's where we expect things to be at 2 p.m. my time. Windy.com's got a great mobile app, by the way. I just downloaded it for my device because I had to use a backup device because I kind of smashed my phone. My phone got a little bit smashed, folks. Not mashed, just smashed. Anyway, there's the lightning scenario on lightningmaps.org. Here is the Doppler radar for Sally, which is stagnating. It's just hanging out, moving at a speed of like 2 miles an hour. Bad stuff for those in the crosshairs. Here's what's going on in the cloud layer, and while it's not light out there, we can still view it using the shortwave radiation map. Part of the NASA GOES interactive weather satellites, and you can see how stagnant that is, barely moving at all. And we'll just put that same area up in water vapor, and you can see that dry air on the western edge. Not helping to strengthen the storm, but causing it to not be able to move. It acts like it wants to move to the west. Anyway, still a very strong counterclockwise rotation in that low, and it looks like some additional moisture up here. Not going to help the situation out very much at all. We won't look at ocean temperatures today. Let's go back to the full U.S. water vapor map. It's quite cold in Pennsylvania as the jet stream is dipping way down. We're getting some lovely Arctic air, and it feels like fall already, even though it's still summer. Leave us a comment if you've got snow on the ground where you're located in the Rocky Mountains. Next, looking at nullschool.net to check out the jet streams after I check out my own content. There we go. Jet streams of the eastern world, and the entire Indian Ocean is flowing east to west, the backwards of the normal direction. Here's the western world's jet streams, and those are all over the place too, extremely chaotic. Check out the northern hemisphere. extreme meridional jet stream flow. And hey, Smash team, allow me to vanish, as it's time to do lots more things. Please don't forget to press like and subscribe, share on your social media, tell your science noobs, tell your science pros, tell your friends, and even your foes. Thanks for flying, American Smashways. Please keep your head and arms inside the Smash plane at all times. Don't forget to Mansa, that is, make America not suck again, as we've got bonus features. It's the 131 angstroms view, the intensity gram, and the colorized magnetogram to show you 0 sunspots. Pardon the slow speeds. And there's the colorized magnetogram. Nothing to write home about there. No significant areas of magnetic organization. No sunspots as shown on the intensity gram. And here's 48 hours at 131 angstroms. And it's having a little trouble loading, and I'm having a little trouble with my patience, so we're going to have to cut it short. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink it. If you do, don't drive. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, and since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.